Now, in the middle of working on this Cardinal and this I-beamer, I get in the mail today and open up the first package. And here comes something I've been waiting for a long time. Now, believe me, I'm sure everybody has the AMA magazine. A lot of people put their heart and soul into this article, so this could be possible to share this with the world of modeling. And then mainly Joe Adamusco, of course, but also Bob Martens, Pat Johnson, John Pothier, Midgley, too many to name. Now, there's some excellent photography work and some excellent work that Ken Thompson has done on the photography. Some of the photography Joe did. But this is a milestone in the career, I guess, my career, Joe's career, of representing the work that we've done, the work that we've put in, and this guy, hey, this guy is the key behind this whole project here. I mean, he really deserves a world of credit. But we really did conspire to make this article as good as it possibly could be. And the amount of hours that went into this, the amount of postage, the amount of everything, I don't even want to think about it. This is really a milestone for both of us. And Joe, congratulations. Everybody, I'm sure I've left somebody out, everybody that's had something to do with this project, honest to God, we really have had a great time doing this. This is one of those things where, I mean, you just can't describe it to somebody who hasn't been there. Joe, you're okay. I don't care what Bob Martin says about you. Hey, congratulations. And Bob Martens, I mean, he's already started on these I-beam plans. Accuracy, detail. I don't know how you're going to top this, Bob, but you better do it, or you're going to be punished. Looking at some of this stuff, it just brings back a lot of memories of this is going on 3 years we've been working on this design, upgrading it, and I hope this I-beamer is going to be even better. So stick with us. We'll trudge through, whether we have a map of the Atlantic or not. We're going across. And there they are, one the Spitfire, one the Seafire. It's going to be impossible to top that unless we can put a third one here, right behind these two. Now, before I get out there and try to spray this, a couple of thoughts. It's been raining all day. It looks like it stopped raining temporarily, but it's going to be super high humidity conditions. And since this is one of the coats of silver that I may use as the final coat, or in some spots it'll be the final coat. Like on the tail, I don't have to respray the tail. The tail is fine. What I'm going to do is just not take any chances at all and put 10% retarder right in the paint, right in the mix. What it'll mean is the paint won't dry as quickly as possible, but I won't have to deal with the possibility that maybe this coat will be trapping in some moisture either. Again, it's always hit and miss. Roughly 10%. Since to spray the silver now, I'll probably use 1 gun load or 8 ounces. So I can mix up a little less than an ounce, and that'll be 10%, 10, 12%. 10 would be my first choice to start with on a day like today, just as an insurance policy. Now, a lot of people that I've spoken to, they tell me, you can't paint in the rain, you can't paint in the cold, you can't paint this and that under these conditions. Well, there's a way you can paint under almost every condition. We've done some painting in snow, painting in rain, painting when there's hurricanes, whatever, but what happens in the environment that we're in right now, and this is going to change real soon. We have Ken's shop pretty well gutted. We don't have airlines going to where we need them, though. We need to do a little electrical work and some airline work. And I'm expecting it somewhere, maybe even in the course of doing this plane, but definitely in doing the I-beamer, we'll be using that new shop, and that'll really make this a lot nicer and easier. I don't know if the people like the way this fillet came out. I'm kind of happy with it though. There's one little spot here. I don't know. I keep filling it in and going over it, but I don't know if that's going to make it in the real world. We'll find out. All right, time to spray. Let's see if we can get this sprayed. The thing is, right up until the minute you paint, right up until the second you paint, you can do things like this. Just get this little area. And while I'm setting up the paint and mixing everything, this can dry, and I'll just hit it with sandpaper. This typically dries in house conditions in 5 minutes. But you never can be too fussy. There's never a time at which you can just say, ah. And two, the model, before you paint it, it can never be too clean. When you're sanding with M600, you tend to get a lot of this guff off. But there's always some little areas, and any little spot you can avoid contamination on. Sometimes you don't even get a fisheye, but what'll happen is you got to pull a tape up and up comes the paint. Well, that was a spot that was probably contaminated at one point. And we're gonna be doing hopefully a really nice finish on this guy. Never hurts even to wipe it 2, 3, 4 times. There's no downside to wiping it. The M600 evaporates so quickly, you don't have a downside, a real downside. And it will get off most of the contaminants so that your paint dries real nice. See, I'm still looking around. Any spot I can see that I can, any spot that looks like I can touch it up now, all of this stuff is worth it in the final analysis. I just can't wait to get into some better spraying areas. This is terrible working out here. Anyway, it has stopped raining. I got about 10% retarder in here. And I'm just doing the bottom to see if it's going to blush and turn milky white. If it does, I'll try 15%. But if 15 doesn't do it, I don't want to go any further than that. That's about the limit at which. So let this dry up and see. Far so good. We're going to try to sneak by with 10%. Now usually, well, I got that compressor there. Usually when you're putting a coat of silver on something that's already been silvered, you really don't need to give it a lot of paint. So what I try to do is a minimum, the maximum would be 1 cup of this. Even though this is very thin, when you get to the last coat or two, you can decant the paint. Pour off the top half and only use the bottom, and then shake it up so you have more silver for coverage. And you can see how this is covering almost instantly now. This has a lot of the silver, the aluminum powder in the paint. Because we just want to get on 1 microfine coat here. It's called a blocker coat. And that'll save us from having to add extra paint. Ah! Look who came to spy on me. Look at this! Whoa, the smell, the smell, the smell. She's spying on me. Get back here. Ugh. Oh, no. God, she complained. She smelled the paint. I'll tell you the truth. She smelled the paint from 2 stories up in the house. Anyway, having a wife like Karen, I've said it a million times, she's worth all the paint in the world. I wouldn't care if I had a paint in Afghanistan. Doesn't matter. Besides, this way, you get tough. And you have to work around all these problems. You just get tougher, baby. Oh boy. Get an idea of how much actually goes into spraying a coat of this. And let's hope this is the final coat, but if it dries up and there's some lumpy spots, I'll fix them. I just never quit. Now the best tip you can pick up off of the video is go around those edges. It's those edges. When you see an I-beamer or a D-tube wing that's got that beautiful reflection, you don't realize how much of it is in the edges. It's the edges that are catching the sunlight. And what I do is I just go over and over, and it doesn't matter. You're not adding a lot of weight. It doesn't even matter. There was a little spot up here I needed. There was a spot I touched up on the tail. Just remember, these are spots that I know only have one coat of paint on them. All the edges, even though they've been painted, you know we're going to have some clumsy guy rub out the top of the canopy. And I'm already in my mind dreaming of what I can do as far as a nice, pleasant paint job for this guy. Now as this is cooking off and drying, there's some things I can do. I'm looking for spots, and there are a few. There's a couple up on the leading edge here. See the spots where the paint is starting to bubble up? And what that is, that's where I don't have a real good adhesion. Now when that dries, that of course will go right back down. But I want to be aware of that. And this is from the retarder being in the paint almost every time. The fillets look like they're going to be fine. Again, is it worth it to spend all that extra time? Yeah, the only person can answer that question is you. I want to get the silk spin here. See, there's another spot here where it's not sticking down as well as it should. Anyway, I'm going to let this dry out in the garage. Otherwise, my wife will choke, and she'll see there's another spot up here. And I have a feeling some of this is because we've been working out here in a cold garage. And what happens, the thinner, especially when it has retarder, it tends to go down, 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 loosen everything up. Now let's see if that doesn't dry out, then we'll have to do a little repair to that. But that looks like about the only spot that's not, I'm not real crazy happy about. This fillet in the front looks okay. Fillets in the back. I just give it the once over before I hang it up out here and then kiss it goodnight. See, the cars are still wet, the raindrops and everything. Anyway, Karen just had something funny. We bought Craig a new bed. This is his old bed out here. We're going to use some of this down at the shop. But she yelled out the window, she said, if you bring that goddamn plane in the house, you're going to sleep on a mattress tonight. I think I'll leave it in the garage. Anyway, it looks like it's drying up okay. I like to babysit it for a little while. There's a couple of spots have loosened up, but basically I think we can live with it. Now what I decided to do is I decided to try to lay this plane out with yellow as one of the base colors. Now we've used yellow before, but there's a thing that happens here, and you really should be aware of it. These are the colors: white, yellow, some light blues, definitely the light blues, and reds. Now, these are the colors that can benefit from having extra pigment. Now, the way that most people go about adding pigment, let's see, oh, this phone. The way that, yeah, forget about it. The way that people go about adding pigment, you can go to a body shop supply place, pick out the color that you like, but definitely white and yellow, light blue and red. These are the colors that you really should add some extra pigment to. Almost everything else seems fine. What you want to do, though, if possible, now in our case, yellow is a unique color. We can use Sig Yellow that already has some pigment in it, so there's no point buying clear if you can buy pigment, the paint that has the pigment in it. Sig Yellow. And we can take basically 8 ounces of this. We can take 8 ounces of 3608S. thinner. So we have a total of 16 ounces of material. Now this will be a little bit on the thick side to spray. But you always want to start. The starting point that you want to wind up with is 25% pigment. Now when you get the pigment from either a body shop supply or if you buy the little jars that I sell, you have to really shake it up. It really does settle out real quickly. But that would tell you that 4 ounces of that material would give you 20 ounces of paint. See, so right away, and 20 ounces of yellow, now, would probably be enough to do most stunt ships. Now, the idea of this is if you have some idea in mind how much material you're going to put on this plane. In other words, what will happen is somebody who winds up with a 90-ounce plane, a lot of times they put a gallon of yellow on. Well, this is an amount that I like to strive for on most paint jobs, assuming a big part of the plane is going to be yellow and probably 30% of it trim or vice versa. But I want to start out mixing this amount of paint. Now, into this 20-ounce mix, I can add Flexol, fisheye killer, and I'll probably have 20 and 1/10 ounces or some amount of material. But then I can put all the thinner I want, all the thinner or all the retarder that I want. So ultimately this will probably be 21 to 23 ounces. But once I make up this batch of material, this is the key to the whole program. Once I know I have 23 ounces of material, that's pretty much going to do it for this aeroplane. And I hope once I make that batch, whatever I have left over, I'll mark it and I'll save it in case I have to do a little repair. But if you walk right down this system and you do your little checklist, bink, 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 you wind up at the end with this material, and it's almost guarantees you're going to have the right amount of material for the plane and that you'll have a successful finish. And that would be the same thing if it was white, light blue, even red, even some of the real fancy colors. But this is just a good starting point for where you want to start if you're going to be doing a finish with Sig Dope and with some extra pigment in it. That's the magic formula that's worked for me. You can vary it. If the paint still looks a little shiny, you probably can go to, say, 35% pigment. That'll be fine. You might even be able to go to 40. I've never gone over 50. 50, it starts to get dull and fuzzy and hazy. And it's still no problem, but the problem is if you're going to put masking tape over it, you run that risk that you're going to pull up the finish with tape. So if you stay with 25 to 35, you're as safe as can be. And that stuff should cover in the minimum 1 coat over silver. And if you want a really deep fancy yellow, give it the 2nd coat, make it even brighter. But that's the magic formula right there. This time every year, and this is funny. Doesn't matter when you do it. Don't have to be fancy about this. I'm going to quit for the day, but I'm definitely going to have some time while Karen's watching TV. This will be what's in my mind, is trying to come up with how I want to lay this paint job out. And I've had several ideas. One idea was to make it that Kawasaki green. I had a couple of nights of trying to make it Kawasaki green. But I thought, hey, one of the planes I've always liked, and I try to borrow some of it, some of the technology off, was the tweener that had the whole back end kind of yellow. It had a flip-flop kind of paint job. And I started making out some sketches. And I was thinking about this in my mind. Again, this goes back and forth. I have some old blue paint from years ago that really just going to need some thinner to bring it up to snuff. But again, this is the time of year. It's a good time to start to do these things and start to come up with some idea. Well, maybe I'd like the blue in the back, the yellow in the front. Maybe I'd like to have a red stripe in between. How would that look? Well, we don't know how that would look. And how should I do one of these Billy Werwich things on the nose? Maybe put a little scallop in here. This is the kind of stuff that I go back and forth with. And if you enjoy this, hey, then you can, of course, scallop the front of the wheel pants. And if you're going to do that, you may as well steal Billy Werwich's whole paint job and do that. But this is a great time to get out some of those appearance judging tapes. And what makes this really a great thing is they have all those paint jobs. Now let's see if we can steal somebody's paint job without making it obvious that we've stolen their paint job. That's always what happens. And of course people do that to me too. And anyway, that's just one of the things. That'll be what I'll be thinking about tonight when we're just laying around watching television. So we'll see you in the morning. Think of a nice paint job now. It's time. Now everybody knows that's been watching the tapes the saga of Ernie. Ernie has a swim bladder disorder. That's his brother Bert, and he swims upside down. Now I got him better. I've been feeding him peas. He got better for about a month, but he's still in terrible shape. He still stays on the tank almost all day up there, upside down, and it's difficult for him to get food. So what I have to do is hand feed him every day. Look, his brother just goes over by him. I have to hand feed him every day, and you can't believe that he's gotten used to me feeding him. He lets me pick him up and feed him every day now. It's just, this is getting to be a ritual every day, every night when I'm done here. Oh, guys, they'll come and take the food right out of my hand. They'll come right up here and take it right out of my hand. Get out of there. Ernie, he's an upside down fish. He never floats right side up anymore. See this guy? This is hard to believe. So he never gets his share of the food. So what I have to do, get away from me, you're biting me. What I have to do, I have to reach in the tank. He's an upside down fish. I have to turn him right side up. Then he gets mad that I turn him right side up. Get over here. Watch, you don't have to worry. He floats right back up. Get over here. Oh my God, this is an operation and a half. And then I have him like this. Now, see how he's letting me hold him here? Now watch. This is really cool. Oh, takes it right out of my hand. Is that cool or what? Ernie. Ernie. Now Ken has fish too, and he's got these same guys. Oh, there he goes. This guy just takes food right out of your hand. It's unbelievable. Upset, but what I'm doing, I don't know. He's like a handicapped fish. Look, he doesn't even resist now. He knows I'm going to feed him. There you go, Ernie. Up, another one. What an Ernie this guy is now. I got information off the internet. It worked temporarily, but it wasn't a permanent cure. Now, if anybody has a permanent cure for swim bladder disorder, which is what these fish suffer from. Not everybody has a fish that you hold in your bare hand. Okay, poor Ernie. Oh, I love this guy. Now, when I'm all done, I touch his little head. I go, okay, Ernie, you're a good guy now. How can you not like this fish? He is so cute. Ernie! Oh, watch. As soon as I let him go, bloop, he goes upside down. Poor baby. I hate being upside down. Oh, my Ernie, 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 Ernie. He's got those little fins. I hope he gets better. See, he likes me. Doesn't really like me, just likes me to feed him. Ernie, okay, time to go to bed. That's it for Ernie. Ernie's going to bed now. Ernie, 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 Ernie. Where is he? Where's he? Oh, you missed Santa Claus, Greg. Santa Claus is down the other end of town. Hey, nice newspaper. Where'd you get that nice newspaper? I ran on the door. I wanted to see Santa. What the hell's going on here?
Excuse me, he's hanging out.
Here's Santa Claus giving away all his Cardinal kits to all the nice little kiddies in town here. Look at this.
I think I want a Cardinal kit for Christmas, Santa Claus.
Okay, Dave Midgley, you'll get one. Don't worry. Life in the Big Apple. Christmas at Wendy's. Christmas at Wendy's is definitely... Santa's outside handing out Cardinal kits. Oh, man. Nice tree, Karen. You're okay. He's nice. Now, in the ongoing quest to get this as even as I can, I thought this would be the last coat. Well, there was some little imperfections in here I wanted to fix, and they look like they're on the way to being fixed anyway. There's a couple other little things. There was some little spots, and this is the thing. This is the reason you put silver on a model. It picks out all these flaws. Now, you'd never see these flaws if you painted the model white or yellow, but you're going to see them for sure. At least I'm going to see them when they're in silver, and then you can pick away at them. Now, right here, I can feel there's another little imperfection, but I can work this. This is going to be one of the focal points of the model. I want to have that as close to being perfect as possible. There also was, and this is something you run into all the time, on the leading edge I hit this, these little spots where the tissue had kind of wrinkled, and I think most of this is from working out in a cold garage. There's some spots here I haven't sanded yet. But that is a typical thing. I can sand that down as long as I'm going to put this extra coat on. And this is all I'm going to get to do today because I got to put it aside to dry again. But anyway, as fussy as you can be, even a little spot around the canopy there, the fussier you are now, it's like building that foundation for a house. It's going to come back and pay dividends later on. When this model is in trim and color, those are the things that are going to jump out at you. Now, before I start any real intense paint job, what I did this last night. I took the whole gun apart. In fact, I should have put on video how dirty it was. I sit it in a can of, half a coffee can of thinner. Now, a lot of people spend their whole life cleaning the outside of a gun and never clean the inside. It's the inside that really matters. And before I start, I have to touch up the silver, but as soon as I'm done with the silver, once I see I'm happy with it, I'll get rid of the silver now for the rest of this project. It's the inside of the gun that you really want to spend some time on. And inside here, there's always little chunks that stay from the year before and seem to, when you're spraying your nice candy apple or your nice yellow with extra peel, you'll poof, it spits right out on you. You can see the stuff that comes out of the bottom. Now, even though we were painting silver, there's some red in here, there's some green. Now, I just happen to know, I tell you how I know this, is Karen's getting me a new spray gun for Christmas. So I'll save that new spray gun for clear. See, I don't want to use a new spray gun to do silver and all the junky colors, but if you happen to get a new one for Christmas, use it for your clear gun. Now, see, now the trick is to get the stuff out of the inside of the gun. And there's just no substitute for if you have some old thinner. Now, see, the other trick you can use is you just let this thinner sit for a week or so. All the stuff will sink to the bottom, and you can carefully pour off the clean thinner. It'll almost be clear at some point in time. Get a new coffee can, and you're all set. You just save you a few bucks, and then you can afford to buy 2 new spray guns for Christmas. You can afford to get some of those Oscar Vance peanut butter deals. By the way, they were good, Oscar. They're history, too. I sat down and watched a movie last night, and they were history. Anyway, just a question. A lot of people don't understand how to clean a gun. They spend the whole time cleaning the outside. It's the inside that matters. Inside, especially inside all these little orifices. And if you just let them soak, if you're not going to use a gun for a month or so, put it aside in thinner and just walk away. Important part of the whole gun is this tip. Even if you just take this tip and soak it, run a little fine piece of wire through there, get that all cleaned up. When you go to spray, you'll notice you don't get any of that spitting or back spitting, and you'll get a nice fine tuning on the gun. And I hope, let's say again, I hope this is the last coat of silver. Hey, I've been hoping that for the last 4 coats. Now, the last coat of silver, this is not even the last, this is the touch-up. I want to make sure I get all of the silver in suspension, run right outside and spray it, and just before I'm going to do the spraying, keep shaking, because I want to get the minimum amount of silver. When I put on a coat that I'm going to sand off, I want to just put on as much as possible, because I'm going to sand it off, so it acts like filler. But in the final coat, I just like to have one micron of silver over the whole thing as a blocker coat, and that the blocker coat is the base for whatever color this ultimately winds up. I got about 5 color combinations running through my head. See, this is the point in time I really enjoy it. Every time I think about this, the paint job changes. I'm thinking what colors I can make it. It's the part of the hobby I guess I enjoy more than the average person. I really do like having this stuff look nice, though. You know, you can argue the merits of flying forever. Whose is smoother, who has more corner, who's 45, but a beautiful model. Ooh, it's just no arguing. Now, always good to test, especially being it's so cold. It is cold out. Usually once a gun is cleaned, they'll have a dramatically different spray pattern too, especially when you clean the end of it. These little pieces, it's always nice to get your gun just set just right. Now this paint still has retarder in it, so it's going to take longer than normal to dry, and you want to be real careful about you not getting a run. Whenever you have retarder in a paint, it's always more subject to getting a run than normal. See if we get the right gloss off of that. If I can get the right gloss, I'll go ahead and paint the mainframe. Yeah, it looks good. I'm just doing touch-ups on this. It's a convenient way to do it. Just put your old mattress out in the driveway. See, with retarder too, you need to give it a lot of thin coats. You can't really blow it on like you would like to, or you wind up with a run. But we're improvising every step of the way here with this. Can't wait to get that shop set up so I can paint controlled conditions. But this has given me a good chance to improvise. Not everybody has the use of a shop. It certainly wouldn't stop me from getting work done. It just makes it a lot harder. All of these edges need to be doubled and tripled. Everything that's an edge, you can always go around it. All of the edges of the open. Look at that sun shining. Woo! It's starting to look nice. That would be nice if we all had controlled shop conditions, but the reality is most of us don't. And you still need to be able to paint whether you have controlled conditions or not. Now, even though we're doing a touch-up coat here, even though this is just a touch-up coat, it'll give me an opportunity to get one extra coat of paint right around the edge. And that's where that thing is going to have a tendency to bleed through. Never miss a chance to get an extra coat of dope around there. That's for sure. Edges. And this is that bad area out here where everything is kind of lifting up when you get an extra coat. You can see how light this thing is blowing around in the wind here. Anyway, that looks like it's going to work just fine. And I don't know if I'm going to be satisfied, but even if I'm not, while I'm laying out trim, I can get a little touch up on that area. That fillet area, I really want that to look nice. Anyway, time to put it away again for a day or so. Now we're at the point where I hope real soon we'll be starting, in fact we may start it today, start the trim job. But what I always like to do is lay out a few little sketches. Here's a couple of little ideas you can use. Now on this plane we're going to be using the typical, I guess the typical paint job that you would normally consider appropriate for a Cardinal. But what you can do with little sketches and little pads, and I don't have any of those little extra drawings that Steve Busso made years ago, I can sketch out what I think, what colors I can want to use, how I'd like to do the lettering, get a couple of ideas. Now, one of the thoughts I always have is I always like to look at the old Nats tapes, and we have plenty of them in stock, to get some ideas for paint jobs, because one of the primary things a paint job, and you'll notice how many people at the Nats spend a tremendous amount of time and energy on a paint job, and it doesn't make it. Something's missing. And I think one of the things, there's some rules. I think there's some basic rules for really good paint jobs. Some of these rules I've violated in the past. They're basic rules that really never change from paint job to paint job, day to day. Number one, the paint job, for it to be really effective in flight, it should be simple. And I'll give you an example. When you make a paint job, I wanted to lay this out, and you start doing this and putting stars all over it, and oh my God, you do a, when the plane is flying, it just looks like it's a mess. It just looks like somebody vomited on the wing. It doesn't have a correct look, to me anyway. This is my opinion. What I've done in the past to try to make it a little more complicated, or make it more exotic, but yet still look good in the air, is I put 4 and 5 layers of stripes along the edge of the trim. But the basic trim is a solid, a contrasting color that you can see from far away. When you do things like this, and you put the stripes in by the body and everything, yeah, everything here should be large so you can see it. When a plane is flying, there's so many paint jobs that look good on the ground, and yet when you get in the air, they just disappear into nowheresville. If you go back and you remember the Killer Bee I had some kind of paint work that went out the flap like that, and so many people have copied that. I look now at the Nats and I see 15 people have copied the old Killer Bee paint job. Well, that's good, because you know what? That's a paint job that worked. I think the Cardinal, basic Cardinal, is a paint job that worked well, and I'm going to be using a variation of this Cardinal paint job as I lay the paint out today. But what you can always do is you can cut, I'll call it paper dolls. You can always take colored paper and cut out the trim in the color you're going to do it in and tack it to the plane, stand back and take a look at it. There's just a lot of little simple things you can do. You can keep it simple, it'll look effective, it'll look good in the air, and it'll have a classic look. When you start doing things like just putting random stripes places and try to connect this dot with this, all of a sudden it looks messy. All of a sudden it has no rhyme or reason. Now this is one of the original. This is a 1981 plane. This is one of my original paint jobs that I laid out. Notice it's in simple, easy to see when the plane is flying, and yet it's detailed. It's detailed and simple at the same time. And it all coordinates and matches. This is one of the original Cardinal type planes. Here's another example of a paint job that to me looks very good in the air. Another thing to think of is when you see how detailed this is, very detailed in by the stripes, and yet when it's flying, it stands out very well. Another one of my paint jobs that I was real happy with. Now this one, I had a lot of little detailing, like at the end, the ends, the points got broader and broader. It was very simple, it looked simple, but it was detailed. The little arrowhead up in the front here. But a lot of little details on here that looked good up close, and yet in the air it had that bold contrasting look that I like. Again, remember, this is just my opinion. This doesn't mean everybody's going to feel this way. But if you want to copy some of my ideas, this is the way I think about a paint job. This is an example of one of my earlier paint jobs that didn't look so good. I used to look at this in the air, and it was terrible. It's too busy. Everything doesn't contrast as well as it should. It's not a good contrast. This was not a real effective paint job. Now here's one that is outstanding, and what's nice about this, I've flown this plane. When you're flying this plane, the paintwork just looks awesome. It has that sawtooth look. It all coordinates, it all matches. This is a real effective, and the contrast. Note how it's simple and yet the contrast is really bright. Now notice, here's Bill Rich's paint job. Simple, very simple to do, effective, looks good in the air. Here's another example. Bright, good contrast, bright colors, contrasting colors. Here's another real good one, Robbie Hunt's plane, Europa. Real nice contrast, real bright colors. Here's 3 good examples right here. 3 good examples of paint jobs that worked real well and were probably relatively easy to do. This was another one that was kind of simple. The lettering became the dominant part of the paint job. But again, everything has an outline, everything has a border color, contrasting colors. It's real effective in the air and very simple to do. Now you can see how this became effective just in the fact that it was contrasting colors, bright colors. And that's another important thing. Colors have to stand out well in the air. There's certain colors that do. Reds, yellows, whites. Some colors that are harder. Blacks, dark greens, like the camo on the spit is not really a great combination to see up against trees. You don't get a lot of contrast. But of course, you're making a semi-scale plane. That's not one of the trade-offs you have. But this one, the details where all the little colors come together in by the root of the wing, all the little details. This was a real effective paint job. This worked real well, I thought. Now, Walt Prey's paint job. Look how good the colors contrast. The lettering. Now, I can't do lettering like that. He's a professional letterer of it. The lettering and striping. Look how it all makes the plane stand out. That paint job is what makes this plane really work. And in the air, very, very effective because the colors contrast. Notice he even has the little pilot's helmet matching. Now, one thing makes the Spitfires look better is, to me, or look very good, is that how contrasting the invasion stripes are. Even when you look at the videos, they really jump right out at you. Now look at this and you'll see it. There's a common theme to all the planes. They have this, well, almost all of them anyway. Bob Hunt's plane, the same thing. Fitzgerald, Paul Walker's plane, Ted's, even Robbie's to a certain degree. What they've done is they've picked up on an excellent little thing, and that is something Lou Dudka years ago made mention of to me. I don't know that he told everybody in the world, but that a paint job has to impart motion. And what's happening here, it looks like this is imparting motion. And you notice the only one that doesn't impart motion here, because it's kind of a semi-scale plane, is Tsunami, but how effective this is. Now, I don't know that this one does the same thing. Maybe it does. I've never seen this plane. Really, I don't even have it on video, but this one I do, and this does look good on video. Paul's plane, of course, looks good on video. These are paint jobs. Having that effect that it imparts motion is another criteria of the paint jobs. I think the Strega paint job worked good for a lot of reasons. The lettering was really nice, the gold leaf. And it had a very contrasting, it almost looks like like one of the picture cards, the Jack, the Queen, the way the colors all start to flow. It's got good flow, it kind of imparts motion, that everything is coming away from the center of the canopy, the focal point, uses a little bit of checkerboard to offset it. Again, these are just thoughts to think about before you run off and spend 50, 75 hours painting an airplane to make it as effective as it possibly can be. Now this is basically the little trim, little insignia that I've always used. Well, I've used this for 15 years, 12 years, I don't know, this little arrowhead thing. And I want to incorporate that into the paintwork. See, this one had a lot of extra striping and detailing, the sidewinder around the edges and corners. But the whole basic idea here is this from far away, this contrasted, and it was simple. It didn't get too complicated. This one I thought imparted some motion from being wide at the root, flowing lines out. And of course the whole Tradition series of planes, it must have been 8 or 10 of these guys, all had that same look, that same wide stripe down the body. Bob Barron's used that effectively. Look at that wide white stripe that he has going down the bottom of his body. It looks real good in maneuvers. This always looked good in maneuvers to me. The matching stripe on the wheel pants and the arrowheads. Kind of a classic look. Billy Werwige's old Junar. Lots of colors, bright colors, and that same thing of imparting motion, like an explosion coming out from the center of the fuselage. Paul's old paint jobs, that same thing, had a very nice look in the air. Now see, one of the things, here's Ted's plane. This is one of the planes he made with gray wings. I thought the white wings stood out better in the air. Of course it saves weight enough to have to paint the wings white, but that's one of the things I like to try to do, is make the plane light enough that you can put enough paint on it. Silver. Silver is a color that to me doesn't stand out well in maneuvers and up against a gray sky. You really have to make something on the plane red, white, and blue. Billy Werwige did that effectively with his Thunderbolt, putting a lot of colors out at the wingtips. Get some color out there. And there's some kind of a copy of a stiletto here. Again, see, this is reverse motion now. This looks like the wings are pointing forward. This is one of my early paint jobs. This I liked. I thought this looked very good in the air too. Now see, here's a paint job that, even though this probably took hundreds of hours of masking and back masking, because the colors don't contrast a lot, it's not as effective. It probably isn't as effective in the air as it could otherwise be. If this was yellow, brighter orange, red, something brighter, than the yellow and the white doesn't really have a lot of contrast. Now planes like the Red Baron with that fancy lettering, if you make it dominant enough, that's all the trim you need on the wing. Even the old sweeper paint job with all the different shades of blue and metallic blue. The whole thing here is, look at it, that everything sweeps back, even the lettering, to impart motion. Anyway, just some good thoughts for you to think about while you're laying out a paint job. And ultimately, this is what you want to achieve. What you're trying for, at least what I'm trying for, is that perfect airplane look. There's some really good tips. These are tips that'll definitely be worth their weight in gold. When you lay out a paint job, it doesn't matter what you're doing, whether it's a Nobler, whether it's a Cardinal, whatever. There's some things you can do to make your life a lot easier. Remember that thing I mentioned on a previous video, make it easier. Let's say, for instance, you've decided you want to make this plane red and white for whatever reason, and you want to have a big white stripe going somewhere down this plane, just to make a good example of, this is what you want to have white, and you want to have the rest of this plane red. And you've decided in the back of your mind that this is going to be the paint job that's going to suit your taste, your needs. All your friends are going to be envious of you. Your wife is going to run out and get a second job because she loves you so much. You've decided to do this. Now, you make the decision right up front. There's a decision that you need to make here. Do you want to paint the red first? And I go back and forth with this with people all the time. Or the white first. Now, I guarantee you, anytime you've ever painted anything red and then go to paint it white, you're going to be in for the surprise of your life. It's going to take 1,000 coats of white to cover this. You're going to be covering this. First off, you're going to need 800 coats of paint to do it. The tape line is going to be a ½ inch thick. By the time you're done, you're going to be frustrated. So my answer to the whole thing is always, no matter what color you paint it, you make the whole plane silver. Then you take the smallest color of the two, the smallest, which in this case is the white. Paint the white first. And then when you backmask, think of something. All you're backmasking is the trim. You backmask the trim, And you can paint the whole plane. I mean, this whole thing now can get painted. If you backmask the trim color, it almost defies understanding why anybody would do it the other way. There's another big advantage. Let's say 1/3 of the plane, just for a rough number, that'll work almost every time. 1/3 of this plane is going to be trim. 2/3 are going to be paint. Well, it means you're going to have paint on top of paint on top of paint. You've added 1/3, and usually that's about 2 to 3 ounces of colored paint. You've added an extra ounce of paint to the plane at no benefit at all. There's no benefit to doing it that way at all. So this is just something to think about. And this is that I've done ever since I've been painting airplanes, is to always try to give some thought to doing the trim first, backmasking the trim, and painting the airplane. Not painting the airplane and then trying to mask out trim and mask. Then now you have to, another thing too, you have to mask off the whole plane. My God, you need 800 sheets of aluminum foil or whatever to do that. So this is a good thought. The first time you do it, you may be a little uncomfortable, unsure, but this way will save weight. It'll make it a lot quicker, a lot easier, and it'll make the plane lighter all at the same time. So just a couple of thoughts. I want to go get the plane. It should be dry by now, and I'm itching to start getting some paint on that guy. Pretty meticulous about doing is, you can see this whole box, is saving templates for everything I do. And this is a good idea. And one thing that in this box of templates, I have pretty much every rib, every plane I've ever built, I have the templates for. More templates. But one of the things that I really should have saved years ago, but I never did, I even have Strager's rudder. One of the things I really should have saved, and I'm sorry I didn't, I had trim patterns for all the trim jobs I've done. See, and I bet you I don't have it right now. See, these are the rudders for different planes. And while I was looking here, I was thinking, yeah, I probably don't have what I really want. I know why. I loaned it to somebody, probably. But I had the arrowhead cutouts from the larger plane, and now what I could do is downsize them. Just go in and in and in until I find it. But anyway, here's a valuable lesson. Save the templates. Get a box somewhere. And don't be a windy. Save them. See, this is just one of the things that I'm sorry I didn't do. Here's the landing gear for the 92 Cardinal. Anyway, I don't have what I'm looking for here. So there's a lesson to be learned. And what I'll do is when I make the, now the lesson is, when I make the templates up for this plane, I'll make a set for John Brodak if he wants to put that as part of the plans. Since this is part of really having a Cardinal, is having these trim arrowheads. You can see we've saved all the templates for the Seafire, the Spitfires, everything. But what it means now, not a big deal, but now, had I saved these, I wouldn't have to go back now and cut these out. And what I do is take contrasting colored paper, lay it out, tape it together, get a pair of scissors, and this allows me to look at it while it's in full scale. Now, if you didn't know what color you were going to paint the plane, this would be a good time to take, maybe make one out of red colored paper, white colored paper, green. Get an idea of what color you think is going to look good there. What I always do is I buy this colored paper, artwork paper, tape a couple sheets together, and always start by making the trim bigger than you think it should be. In this case, I'll make it just gigantic. Then I'll fine-tune it, cut it down, cut it down, cut it down. Then the last step is, what angle do you want to have it? You can see that some of the angles on some of the Cardinals, the arrows went back. Some of them, they ran parallel to the leading edge. Well, you can change the look of a plane totally by just changing how that trim sits on there. But I'll start with a nice big piece of paper. I've laid this out in a scale that's much larger than I want to use, just to get an idea of what angle I want to make. I think this angle here has to go back. Again, this is where it would really help if I had the original templates. I have a gut feeling there's somebody up in New Hampshire that has borrowed them. Won't mention any names. Okay, now I know overall this is bigger than I want it to be, so now I can start tracing this down. I can start, oh, that angle probably isn't right either. I can start cutting. This is what I call paper dolls. I like paper dolls. Paper dolls is a lot easier than masking out the masking on the plane over and over and over again. And you don't run any risk of pulling up the paint when you do it this way. If you're going to design that custom killer next concourse winning paint job, that looks a lot closer to what I'd like to have. Now it still looks like this is too big. So now by taking this, I can shrink this back, let's say 3/8 of an inch. And eventually I'm going to get the look that I want. And if I make it too small, I just go get another piece of paper. But once I have my pattern, this is the whole key thing, and you got to keep looking at it and saying, yeah, I like it, I don't like it, I like it, I don't like it. This is too thick out here now. This is not in keeping with the... Actually, what I'll do is I'll trim off a whole, maybe a 1/4 inch off this. Again, a classic paint job, any of the classic paint jobs, one of the ones that I thought was super, super effective and super simple to do was John DeTavio's Falcon. That plane used to look so good in the air. Talk about imparting motion and being bright colored. Now that looks a lot closer to it. Okay, now I know I want to get that point in the back. I need to add a little piece of paper to the back here. I can just tape on a piece. Again, once you see this little technique, I think almost everybody can pretty much come up with their own little ways of making it more adaptable, cuter, fancier. But having a classic paint job that you can call your own, now I feel this is mine. Whether people want to give me credit for it or not, it doesn't matter. I know it's mine. Okay, and I know if it has a certain angle back, it really does look nice. This thing is to just get the edges trued up once I have all this slivering going down. And I will return these, I will pass these on to John. I think it's a good idea to somehow trace these right out on the plan. Bill Simons did that a couple of times with planes that he published. That was a good idea. Now you have a line to work off. Of course, there's a lot of people that build a Cardinal and want to make a replication of the paint job. This can make it that it's kind of accurate anyway. Anyway, this just saves some work also. Because you could use that same pattern on, you know, your own design, or you could modify it, make it a little pointier. Okay, now that once you have this finalized and you're kind of happy with the pattern itself, now you can do something that's a lot of fun. Now you can say, well, what if I put it that way? That doesn't impart motion. What if I put it this way? Looks like a gefilte fish. Okay, what if I did two of them? If I put one here and flip-flop? Well, you see, you have an unlimited amount of choices now as to what you want to do. But my feeling is these arrows look the best when they're just slightly canted back. Now I have to take into account that the tail has a hinge line running through it. I don't want to run anything through the hinge line. So that limits me to the front half of the wing. I'd like to pretend that this runs through the front half of the wing. Again, I want to just pick up an angle that I'm happy with. And when I do that, then I want to measure to the flap hinge line, to the flap hinge line. Once I get that, so then I can flip it and do the other side, and they'll both be the same. See, here's what's nice about having all these pictures laying around. If you notice, the back end of the trim to the hinge line was parallel, so it lays out a little box that you can put your lettering in. It's an equal distance from the back end of the trim to the hinge line, back end of the trim to the hinge line, and it also gives you this angle which would be perfectly equal. So by two measurements you can set the whole template up and then just get the point as close as you want to the center of the fuselage. So this makes aligning it real easy. It saves a lot of work making up all kind of exotic alignment templates. And I like the sweep. It kind of sweeps back. That's one of the things I really like about this paint job in particular. Now see, this is the same plane in 1988, but notice how the trim runs right parallel to the leading edge. Now that was one of the things I didn't like. I looked at the plane, I wasn't crazy about the way that trim laid out. Now see, by laying the arrowheads out with the trim, this is why it's nice to do paper dolls. Right, even with the leading edge, it kind of took away. I don't think it added the motion that I wanted. I liked it a lot better when they swept back. Easy it is to see how it would look both ways. You could even sweep it back a whole lot. Well, I don't like that either. But there's an amount. And the amount seems to be when these two points are parallel. Now notice I put a piece of tape on them, and when I get the final dimension, I'll mark it right on a template. Again, that's the kind of information that if you were going to try to copy a paint job, it'd be real handy to have that information. It'd save you hours of laying things out and freehanding stuff. Again, when the arrowheads are swept back just enough that the back edge is parallel to the hinge line, that looks just about right. Now another thing, while we're talking about this, the next step, of course, is going to be to lay out the tail pattern, and having this big pattern, I can just duplicate it and shrink it down. I have all the angles, all the sweeps. I just need to make a smaller version of it. Now, if you had a photocopier, that would be real handy. We don't. We have to do it all freehand. Notice how things, and just things that I'm thinking about, how things match. The canopy, the point on the canopy, the point on the trim, point on the rudder, point on the wingtips. It kind of ties everything together with a classic look. Now I just want to get a final measurement here. Again, this is why I love having paper doll. Even if I get sick of this, I can just deep six it and go do something else. But if you don't lay it out this way, if you're just guessing as you go, it's really difficult. I want to come up with a number that I think is going to work for me. Six inches. 6 inches. It looks a little too far forward. Maybe I'm going to have to sweep this back. Let's see what 6 looks like. 6 and 5. Yeah, I think we'll try 6 and 5. So it'll be a little more than parallel. 6 and 5. Six and 5 gives me a nice sweep backward. Now we need to punch a couple of holes in here just to hold the tape in place, so I can maneuver this around. Get me some masking tape here. And what this allows me to do is just maneuver this around little by little until I get it exactly how I want it. I decided to go with the 6 and 5 number, so what I need to do, now I have a template that I can use. I want to see how close I want to get it up into the fillet. And I want to just measure this point right here out at 6 inches. This will make it real easy. 6 inches right there. And just measure 5 out at the tip. Up here, well, I want to put a little hole here so I get another piece of tape. In other words, I want to have this, maybe even out here. No, not really. I want this to just stick down, and when I flip-flop it, I'll move the tape to the other side. Now I'm right on 6 inches. See, so this will be easy to replicate for the bottom, the other wingtip. And the last cap strip before the tip, 5. Now I just want to check. I've got one panel laid out, and of course now I can flip-flop back and forth. 6 inches, 5 inches. Now it's just a question of, because this fuselage has a semi-profile on one side, the center, if you reference off the center of this, it kind of looks funny, but I'm referencing off the middle of the arrowhead so that the big picture looks right, rather than trying to marry it up to the side of a cheek cowling. Those are the kind of compromises you got to constantly make. Just some little things I like to do. I like to take the tape and lay it out on my shirt. Just touch it once, very carefully. I have that red tape that John sent, John Brodak, and I want to find something I can use it for. I want to do it on an experimental area because I'm not familiar with using it yet. And it seems like it has. I did a little test off camera to see if it was real sticky. It seems like it has more stick than this. So for right now, because I have a limited amount of time, I don't want to do the experiment right now. I'll save that for some future project when I want to, where I can really do it accurately. Right now I know this material will go real quick, can mask off the whole plane real quickly. We wanted to do some work over in Kenny's shop, so I don't want to spend the whole day masking this off. Now I still see, you know, I still see a lot of little spots. I wish I could take the time to touch up on this, but you know what's going to happen if I start getting myself really crazy? I'm not going to get this finished. And I really want to have this finished, you know, in some reasonable amount of time. So one of the compromises, for example, if I wasn't building another plane, well, maybe I'd actually sand this coat of silver out again, but I think this is going to be fine for this type of a model. But it's difficult for me to just say, yeah, that's good enough. I'm used to just going and doing it over and over until it's perfect. Anyway, there are a couple little spots on the other wing. I looked and I said, ooh, but then if I sand this down, I lose another 2 days. Anyway, this is another point. When you're trimming off tape, if you take a brand new XL blade, get it right in the corner of the point, you can ping one corner up, get it right in the corner, and you make real nice points in a hurry. Again, if you take the top piece and work the blade into the corner, of course new blades, this is a place for new blades, get the blade right in the corner along the edge. Now also, where the two tapes overlap, I just stick my fingernail in there and rub that little joint down. Now I try to look from a top view and see that I have the right angle that I want, that it's balanced looking. And I'll flip this over and do the bottom. Where having all these little reference points really pays off. It really makes it real easy when you flip it over. Otherwise you're trying to, it makes you crazy trying to marry these lines up. Now, of course, when I go over to do the other panel, I just put the tape on the other side of the template. It's a good system, and it's worked well for me anyway. Again, when you come up with a system that works for you, the best thing is just fine-tune it. But always, and no matter how you do it, painting the trim first is always such a good idea. Nice. I can get the other panel laid out. This will all be done in a very short amount of time. Then I just need to downsize that template, mask off the back. I'll actually get some trim painted today. When I lay out the outer tip here, of course, I want to put the tip weight box in place so I get an accurate, if the trim happens to run right through it or the stripe runs through it or something, I have that right in place. I don't have to try to interpolate that off the plane. Okay, we're closing in on having a wing finished here. And now I want to downsize that template by eye. Now this is just by eye. Tried to get these angles the same, the curve, the overall look the same, and the taper the same. And the thing we can't control now is because the 1/8 inch stripe will be the same. It really, if you were going to do a shrink down, it would be a 1/4 inch on this and an 1/8 on this. I've done that before and I don't like it. So I'm just going to go with the 1/8 inch stripe on everything, and that's one of the compromises I have to live with here. And I can start masking off the tail. This is 1 3/4 inches to the point, and I put a little spot on here, 1 inch to the trailing edge. And this, because this has a little more of a taper in it, I'm trying to marry that up so it looks right. Even though it's not exactly the same angle, it tends to follow that same percentage up in the front. You can get all these little tape joints down. Of course, I just need to transpose the same thing over using the same measurements. Flip it over and do the top, and hey, then take a look at it, stand back, make sure I have all the proportions and angles the way I want it. Okay, that looks pretty balanced. Now I can flip it over and do the top. You're constantly looking at it to make sure I got the look that I want. It's kind of like, I don't know, carving a statue or something. You got to constantly go back and forth, trade away a little bit, trade away a little bit. You just never can stop and say, yeah, I'm satisfied with that, until you have it just exactly the way you want it. Okay, all of the trim is now masked out. I made up a little pattern, and I want to go back and forth with this pattern. I want to get this angle on the canopy the way I want it. And I made a couple extra ones up just to see what shapes, and if I wanted more of a curve, less of a curve. Again, I'll pass them on to John. If he wants to put them on the plans, that's fine. A canopy, there's a couple of rules that I use for a canopy. A canopy should always be bigger than you think it should be. A little tiny canopy just, I don't know, it starts to look like an airliner then instead of a stunt ship. But this looks like about the proportion I would really be wanting to have here. And of course then I'll flip-flop it over and mask off the other side at the same time. Now I can get an overall look as to if I like it, if I don't like it, if I want to change it, want to make it any different. I don't know, I'm thinking that looks pretty decent. Okay, one of the things I have to make a compromise on, now normally what I would do is I would want to paint the trim colors first. But since the trim colors are going to be candy apple colors, You never want to paint a candy apple color and then have to put tape on it. The tape leaves little impressions in the candy apple paint. It's really to your advantage to always paint the candy apple last. So what I'm going to do is kind of reverse what I normally would do on a plane, and I'm going to mask off the trim. Since the base color is going to be yellow, I'll just paint everything except what we've outlined as trim. It doesn't matter if you do it one way or another. Either way, there's just going to be a little more masking this way. But what it's buying me, what it's saving me, is having to, if I paint the blue first, I go over it with the tape, it's going to leave a very funny edge. Where the tape actually sticks to the candy apple, it doesn't come out perfect. And that's one of the lessons you can learn, I guess the easy way, the hard way, or whatever. But now I want to get some aluminum foil and mask off all the trim, now that I have this up to this level. Used tin foil before, you're in for a really nice treat. This is technology we got from Walt years ago, and it works so well, it's unbelievable. There's a real shiny side, there's a dull side. I forget, I'll have to do one to check it out. Which one leaves a better impression? What you want to do is lay it nice and flat, and just rub the entire, there we go, rub the entire area, and you'll see the tape leaves an impression. The tape line comes right through. I don't know if you can see this real close, but you can see the tape impression that it leaves. And you can clearly see where it leaves that edge. It leaves you a nice pattern, just an imprint pattern. You can take a nice new XL blade, go over some newspaper, or we're going to try that cutting pad. Maybe that cutting pad would even be good for this. And make yourself up a pattern that's 1/8 of an inch thinner. And then you only have to deal with the masking tape is only going to be touching for 1/8 of an inch on each side. And that's a real nice way to do it. You don't get any bleed through like you do with newspaper or Playboy magazine paper or whatever. Real nice way to do it. And once again, thanks to Walt for this technology and sharing it with us. Really used this before. I'm just trying this for the first time, trying to use that XL pad, a cutting pad, as a way to trim out. Normally, if you didn't have a pad, you could of course use newspaper, or you could use scissors. Probably this will dull the blades real quick, but buying blades is part of it. And I want to go right out. I'm trying to leave roughly 1/8 of an inch line. And what this gives you is a real accurate mask. Actually, that worked pretty good. That's just one more use for the old cutting pad. The way to do this is to locate the template real accurately with some little pieces of tape. Rub them up on your shirt so they're not too sticky. And of course the next thing is to just run that piece of tape right in there. You can use the wide 3/4 inch tape. You probably, in this case, if we had some thinner tape, we could use that up. But always rub it up on your shirt first. It makes it a little less sticky. Now this end here, now you can just use your fingernail or whatever, just get the edge down, and we'll seal that with a coat of clear before we paint it. And just go right around the whole model now and mask off all the trim. And now I remember what it is in my great memory that I have. It's if you put the dull side of the tin foil up, you can see the impression a lot easier. See, this is where it's nice to have video, because if you really truly had forgotten that, forgetting everything here, you can go back and look at the video and say, how did we do it the last time, or how did he do it, or whatever. Video is an invaluable reference. See how it just leaves that nice little impression. See how nice that works on a tail? You get that impression right in there. It's so nice. The rest of it is just redundant, repeating it over and over again, but to get all that trim masked off, and I'll be ready to seal up the edge with some clear. I'll do the rest of this off camera. This is looking like I may be able to get some of this paint done today. Ready to leave that little cover for the push rod off for now, and of course leave the push rod off. It just, even though I haven't made it up yet, just make it as easy as you can to get in there and get the paint in there, since it's all going to be the same color. If I didn't do that, then I'd be painting down in there, and oh man, how would you get in there? What a pain in the neck that would be. That's a good little tip. Just leave that off right to the very end. Now the only thing left to do here on this part of it on a trim is give a coat of clear to the edge of the tape. What I want to do now, I want to lay out the lettering. I just have enough time this afternoon maybe to lay out the lettering here. Again, it's cheap insurance to give it this coat of clear. Okay, all of this is sealed now. I've been thinking about the lettering for a while. I'm not sure exactly how I want to do this. I got some Cardinal graphics from Russ Hunsberger, but I don't think they're really appropriate for this kind of a model. I thought about it, and I'm going to tape off the lettering and do a real, what amounts to be a real lettering job. Original Russ got me these, Russ Hunsberger, and I was thinking, yeah, maybe I can use these, you know, I can paste them on or something, make a real quick job of it. But then when I look at how much time and energy I've put into this, I don't think I'm going to use these. I'll save these for some other project, or I'll give them to John for one of his models. Maybe for a sport model these would be fine, but I want to try to lay out some real nice lettering here if I can. Well, what I did, I laid out two guidelines, and I wanted to try to lay, this is just one of my business cards, just lay out the word B-R-O-D-A-K, the other wing cardinal. And I just want to see how this is going to lay out roughly when I lay out the spaces. Now when you're going from something that has a space to no space, I'd like to have the last letter wind up right here. So one of the things I want to do, this will take a little bit of improvising. I want to lay these out in, well, let's just see something. C-A-R-D-I, doesn't count, N-A-L. We're going to be bigger on the other side. So this side will have the wider of the two letterings, but rather than do it that way, what I want to do is I want to trim 1/8 of an inch off of this And this will give me a little bit better spacing here. So let me trim 1/8 of an inch off of this. And I'm just using this as a spacing to space some of this stuff out. Ow. There's my little tape. Now, if I wanted to do slant lettering, I'm just going to do straight up and down lettering. And line this up. That just holds it in position. This is just to lay out the boxes. In fact, I need 1/4 inch tape. And all this is doing is laying out the boxes so you can get a little bit of a look. Now, of course, you can always use computer-generated lettering. That'll get you out to the field in a hurry, but I just wanted this model to be a little special. And this is the kind of lettering I don't know if you really could even do it in computer graphics. But I basically am laying out the boxes, and then I'll lay out each letter within that box. Of course, if you have any I's or thin letters or wide letters like M's, B-R-O-D-A, they're all similar size letters. Basically lays out the boxes, and of course the letters get bigger and bigger as they get to the middle of the wing, so it'll be a little fancier than if you normally just laid this out in squares. And I'm trying to be a little fancy here, trying to lay this out. I don't know exactly how I'm going to want to do this. A lot of times you have to go back and forth quite a few times before you figure out exactly what you want to do. But even that's okay, because it's only tape and you can pick it right off and do it over again. Take into account that the center of this letter is going to wind up going uphill. So I almost have to dummy each one up this way to get the angle right. Now you got to get your fingernail in all the little corners here. Like I can use the blunt side of the knife. Fingernails are all chewed up from... Okay. Then I can trace this out how I want it. I want to cut the angles, then I can pull it right off. It's easy to do it when it's not laying on, because of course we're going over silk span. Make it as difficult as you can. If you're going over a foam wing, of course this would be a lot easier. I'm using this as my center reference. Again, when this is done right, this does look kind of slick. Walt, pray and be proud. There we go. It's a lot like paper dolls is what it boils down to. Just making these patterns, and you can do this. Go down, have it read into a computer, and then you can computer generate a mask, but hey, you can also do it with a roll of masking tape. Sometimes you just get back to old-fashioned modeling skills where there is no computer. Good old-fashioned labor. At that R, I don't like the way that R looks. I gotta figure out what I did wrong. Maybe that's what I did wrong. Does it look better that way? Can't figure it out. See, if you're a lettering specialist, you'd know that. When you're an amateur, it doesn't look good that way. It is all part of the fun. In fact, you can go back and adjust it as many times as you want to. Needless to say, use sharp blades every step of the way. See, I think this is what was wrong with it. Boy, somebody who did this for a living would notice right away. That's the fun, the challenge of it all. There you go. Again, you can look at each letter as you go along, and even if you don't like the whole thing, you could rip the whole thing up. As long as you don't have the tape so sticky that it's pulling the paint up. Gives you a lot of choices. You're going to line up this piece of the A. This is the center of it. I want these all to line up. And that spaces me out over there, then I just have to put the extra pieces on. And what I want to do now is I want this to be a little thicker, so that when I lay this out, the edging of this in 1/8 inch tape, this will come out, but I won't run out of border. Anyway, I think this kind of stuff just adds a little bit of artistic interest to the project. And it adds that little bit of interest when people say, you know, that, how did he do that? Gee, that isn't a decal. Well, I guess that's part of the thrill. You can just pull up all these layout strips, and we can look at it and see if we have the proportion right. And if we don't, rip it up and do it over again. Well, this will be ready. Give it a coat of clear around the edges. And we can move on to the other panel. Just takes a little time. And I think that really does make it makes it a lot nicer. Okay, now we'll just kind of repeat the same thing, but we have more letters to deal with here. We'll lay everything out pretty much identical to the wing past, but we need to take into account those extra letters. When I get to the letter I need to make a special size box, of course. Take that into account. So I lay out the I ahead of time, then my spacing from that point on will be correct. Should be correct. Maybe will be correct. I need to, because the I is the only variation, I can always start at the middle, work to the end. This is just going to work out about right. And I can start laying out the letters. Get rid of the mask, seal this up with some clear. Look at it a couple more times, make sure I haven't spelt anything wrong. B-R-O-D-A-K. Good thing it's not a long Polish name. Alright. I guess that's going to work out okay. And we still have enough time. I can get the base coat on here today. So let me mix up the yellow and get cranking along. We'll maybe get the base coat on here before it gets dark. Now that pond is solid ice. This is the coldest we've ever tried to paint in. It is brutal out here. I am freezing. I'm going to set up the table here, but I want to do a little test on this. I mixed this up with the usual amount of extra pigment. I want to make sure it's thin enough that I'm not going to need any retarder. It doesn't feel real humid, it just feels cold. Can hardly touch the spray gun. Yeah, it looks like it's going to be okay, so we'll get the main frame out here and get busy. Oh, it is really cold out here. Woo. Gotta rest my hand. Whew. Oh, I've had to resort to wearing a glove. My hands are so cold. Okay, as soon as that dries a few minutes, we'll flip it over and do the other side. Boy, if I didn't have a name for this plane yet, I would be calling it the Iceman. Oh, God, my hands are like ice. I'm getting out of here. Let this dry out in the garage. That is a good way you can tell if you've been successful in adding the extra pigment. You see on this, there's just the slightest hint of a gloss. If this is dull like chalk and very chalky, you might want to put a little more paint in. If this is really shiny like glass, you can put a little more pigment in, but you can fine-tune it to just get that just hint of a gloss. Now the reason for that is if you're going to do any ink work, the ink will not really stick well to paint that's overly pigmented. So if this was really chalky and dull right now, what I'd want to do is spray on a real thin coat of light coat before I went any further. Now you can see it's been sitting up by the heating vent overnight, so I'm going to pull it down, take off the tape, and hey, maybe we can even get the trim on today. Now from this point on, I try a couple of things. I try to keep the model as clean and fingerprint free and grease free and I don't know, everything free. Take an old bed sheet. A bed sheet is certainly better than this pad, which has a lot of oil stains on it. Try to wash my hands kind of frequently, even though my hands are from doing all kind of junk, they're not the cleanest in the world. If you're really in doubt, you could wear rubber gloves. That would be another alternative. But you want to keep the model clean while I'm detaping it, backmasking it, doing all the little detail work today. Now the trick is, at least as far as I'm concerned, is to pull the tape back real slow. I want to leave on the 1/8 inch masking tape. That's going to be my line for trim. Pull it back nice and slow. Now you can see the reason this is relatively successful is you only have tape sticking out on the edge of the tinfoil. If you had tape over this whole thing, there's a lot more chance you're going to destroy that silver coat or rip it up. Pull it straight back and nice and slow is the ticket. Now John Brodak, last night I was talking to him and he gave me a couple of tips on using that red tape. And when you release it, just hit it with a hairdryer. Now I'm wondering if that would even work on regular masking tape to soften the glue. See, the problem is this has been out in a cold garage, then a warm cellar, then heating vents. We're really not working under controlled conditions right now, where if this was always in a controlled environment. The trick is just be patient. When you go to tear this off, you almost always pull up some of the paint. Another thing it helps is never to leave the tape on any longer than you have to. If you go put this, see, like you wouldn't want to do this the day before Christmas and leave the tape on over the Christmas holidays. Not a good thing. You want to get the tape on 24 hours for it to dry. You'd like to have 24 hours. That gives you a relatively nice clean edge. But you certainly don't want to leave it on. Oh my God, President Nixon's going to help me take the tape off today. I'm coming! Well, so far it came out pretty clean. Kind of like the way the fillet looks. Glad we're not going to have a silver and yellow plane. This is not my two favorite colors. Anyway, I do have some nice trim paint, some nice paint that was left over from the tweener days. I hope it's still good. It looks like it's 100 years old, but usually you can rejuvenate it with a little thinner, as long as you're not going to do the whole plane. If you're just going to do trim like this, you really can use up old paint. Alright, this looks pretty good. Okay, notice I always try to do the bottom first just to see if there's going to be a problem. I can anticipate it, but this should be no problem. Get the tape off the top. I can start backmasking the trim. It's right at a point now where it starts to become an airplane. You start to really get excited about working on it. See, now I'm glad, for instance, that I never glued this cover on. Painting here is fine. Everything's nice, getting into the masket and everything. If that little piece was on there, oh, by now it'd have fingerprints in it and everything. Nice little tip. Anything you can leave off the wheel pants. If these wheel pants were on here now, you'd never get in here painted and sanded, and you'd be banging and hitting it with your fingernail and everything. So these are just a couple little things that seem to make getting it together at this point, from this point on actually, a little bit easier. Alright, the only thing I got to do is the canopy, that last little piece, and then I'll be able to get the clear on the inside edges, and then I want to figure out what I want to do with the lettering. Is to pull off the canopy and we'll be ready to start the next step. Want to seal up the inside edge of this with a coat of clear. Notice that the 1/8 inch tape never comes off the plane until the very end. And then I want to lay out the edging on this lettering. This will give this a chance to dry. This came up pretty clean. I'm really surprised considering how diverse is the right word here, too. A little speck right here. And be ready to lay out the lettering. Now I assume that's going to be a little labor intensive, but hey, anything worth having is labor intensive. Now before I lay out the 1/8 inch tape, I always use either a credit card or one of those plastic, those little tools you use for ink lines and electroset, just to break the edge off. Give a little bit nicer edge in the final product. I'm in no rush to do this because it is pouring rain out there. As usual, you can depend on Jersey weather to throw you a monkey wrench. Now the object is just to get an outline around all the lettering. And then when I backmask this, I can paint it white or whatever contrasting color, orange, I don't know yet. Hey, this is just one of those jobs that it gets real labor intensive. And if you just sit down and tough it out, you can get all the corners, all the angles, and you'll have a nice 1/8 inch border around everything when you're done. Now I always laugh at when people are over here and they're looking at me doing stuff like this and they go, oh, it's so much work. Oh my God, so much work. Well, if you don't do it, what is the choice? Okay, you can use some decals, you can use some of those computer letters. But the fact is, when people see this kind of lettering, I'm sure they're just thinking, just a little bit more intense. It's just constantly putting the knife right up into the corner or on the edge. Always using a new blade. Don't even think about using up some of the old blades if you want to make all these little angles. Only 25 more letters to go till Christmas. Now I'll just work my way right down to all. You can tell this is going to be a long day. Hey, but this is what, if you want to make artwork, it takes time. You just can't crank this stuff out in 5 minutes. I think it's time for a coffee. It's time for coffee. It's time for a Budweiser break. That is really labor intensive, cutting up all those little pieces of tape. Now it doesn't really matter what hangs out here. We only need to work on the inside of this for now. And as if that wasn't enough, hey, Wendy, go have a cup of coffee and you can do this whole panel by yourself here. Like being in prison. Now tell me Karen doesn't know when it's time for a coffee break. She comes down with 2 cups of coffee. She says, I know, you're doing all that taping. I hear you cursing and screaming. Comes down with 2 nice cups of coffee. Oh, what a wife. I'm telling you. She knows how to get a Cardinal lettering job through the pipeline here. Wendy, get busy. Oh my God. Anyway, this stuff always does go better with a little bit of a coffee break under your belt. Get ready. See this roll of tape? I got to get this roll of tape on this wing, and then I can paint and hope it stops raining. There is nothing better than 2 cups of coffee when you have a cardinal wing to letter. All right, get busy. See, I've been trying to put this off. See, what I want to do is train this tape to go dunk, 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 jump up and do its own thing on the wing. You know what? It's not going to happen no matter how much coffee I drink. So let me get busy. Oh, God, I'm sick of his tape. Okay, next step, get out the clear. Get these letters all cleared up, and I'll be ready to backmask and maybe even get this shot today. It's wet, but it's not raining anymore. And this is always the most delicate part. I want to get only the inside by the silver sealed. The other side I don't really care about. But this will build me a little lip, a little area when I go to backmask this to paint these edges. Boy, the weather has been unpredictable. It was pouring this morning. They predicted snow. It rained almost all day. And I'm racing like a wild man here trying to finish this up. If I can get this backmask, I can get the trim on here. And tomorrow's Christmas Eve. And the thing can be sitting by the heating vent on Christmas Eve. What a nice thing to have under the Christmas tree. Okay, ready for the backmasking. Now the backmasking is really pretty simple. I want to backmask just enough. I'll just wrap the foil around. But the idea is just to get as little masking tape touching the paint as possible. And around the lettering I'll have to fill this all in with little pieces of masking tape or some kind of contact paper or something. Again, this side of the canopy is going to be kind of a nuisance with that horn in the way there. Anyway, you never realize just what a pain in the neck it is having that thing out there when you're trying to do a nice finish. But the tin foil is not going to jump on a plane by itself, that's for sure. I better get busy. Karen, more coffee. The easiest way to do this, even if you have to use a lot of little pieces, is to get the masking tape. So only, see, this is a nice clean table. I vacuumed this off. Saying that nice tape that rips when you go to take it off. Oh boy, I'm telling you. Try to race against the weather and you always lose. Okay, the idea again is get as little of the tape. I just like to have 1/8 of an inch of tape, maybe the most, sticking down on there, and I can get that right up on the 1/8 inch tape. Now as I press it down here, it takes a little bit of the tack out of the tape too. But if you had the table all dirty and full of sawdust, needless to say, you'd be bringing that roll up onto the model. Again, if I can get that 1/8 of an inch tape right up on top of the other tape, there'll be almost no tape actually touching the paint, which would be real nice. That minimizes the risk that you're going to pull up some of the paint. And sometimes you have to be a little creative about where to put the joints and seams, but this is really the easiest way I know of. This beats the heck out of newspaper or whatever the alternative is. Area like this, sometimes you can just make a reverse pattern of what we just made. I can see the impression coming up through. Just saves you a little bit of work of making all the joints and let that stay up there. But the idea again is to get as little of the masking tape touching the paint. Let it touch the tape if anything. And that just leaves a nice little impression. You can make a little mask out of that. Now obviously the fewer joints you can put in this, the better it'll be. Now when you're going around a curve like this, sometimes it's just easier to just lay in the tape like it was shingles. The horn is such a nuisance thing. Love the best, filling in all the little stripes and strips with strips of masking tape here. Come on, it's fun. Anyway, it's paper dolls. It's nothing more sophisticated than a little game of paper dolls. We're finally ready. Oh, I just hope it stopped raining out there. Get all my little tin foil pieces on, check all my tape, make sure you don't have a little obvious spot. Nice about the foil, you can wrap it around the edge. Press everything down. There's always a few spots that jump up. Now a couple of tips for spraying candy apple. Always do the bottom first. This lets you know that you have the mixture right. This looks like a color that I'm going to like. I get one coat on. This is a nice thin coat here. Let's see, in fact, how much pressure we're using. I think we got 20. Yeah, 20 pounds of pressure. I'm going to let this one sit up. While this is sitting up, I'll do the top. And we're almost at the end of the video. We'll just run out this tape on spray painting here. And it's not raining, so hey, say a prayer. Anyway, this is just atypical of using candy apple lacquer. Now you can see little spot in the corner here I missed. I'm looking around for zebra striping. You can see there's a little zebra stripe in there. Once this dries, you really need to go over it. The best thing is to do one coat this way, let it dry, then do one coat this way, and a third coat at a 45-degree angle, assuming you're going to get 3 coats out of it. And it's best to put it on with a real low pressure, real low setting on the gun. And always do the bottom first for practice. Now, the way you get yourself in trouble with candy apple paint, and this is my own mixture, it's half candy apple purple and half blue. It's a custom color that I used on a tweener. I have just enough left over to do the trim, so even though we're not going to be flying a tweener much anymore, doing the letters can be a little bit of a pain. The only suggestion I have is do them in thin coats. Don't try to blow on one heavy coat or you wind up with a big tremendous thick edge. The candy colors cover pretty well, not bad. But again, it's lacquer. You must use Flexol, fisheye killer, or this will definitely crack over silk span. Especially these letters are right over the silk span open bays. But you can come up with some really nice colors, something that really is artistic if you have that artist inside all of us. I'm going back and forth this way to the initial coat. But I'll go in the opposite direction for the next coat. Now I can start to... And don't get the gun too close. Another good trick. Colder right here than I thought it was. My hand is freezing to the gun. Anyway, the end of the tape. I hope some of this information is useful for you, and if you want to try candy apple paint, you'll give it a shot. You can still buy it in the state of Massachusetts. The colors are unbelievable. They charge you $10 for the color chip chart. Be prepared if you call up for a chip chart. 10 bananas. Now we're going to put this thing aside to dry. Tomorrow is Christmas Eve, so kind of time for some celebrating here with the family. Time for celebrating for all the good things we have. And we have plenty. There's plenty to be thankful for, that's for sure. Now what I'm looking for is to see if this happens to start fogging up, because it really is humid. I'll run down and put about 10% retarder in this too, but I like not to use the retarder if I don't have to. So I'm going to kind of sit out here and babysit this along. Hope I can get away without using retarder. Okay, after sitting out in the garage all day, gassing off, looks like it's drying up fine. And being tomorrow's Christmas, hey, let's hope everybody out there counts their blessings and enjoys all the good things we all have. See you on the next tape. Boy, I hope everybody has as much fun at Christmas as we do in our family. Hey, we got the village going, we got the trains going, got the wife baking cookies. Oh my God. Merry Christmas to everybody from me and Karen. We are truly blessed to live in this day and age and have so many good friends and so much fun. So many things to live for. Tomorrow we'll be opening up our presents. I can't wait. I know there's some Dremel saws and